Emotiva, known for creating some of the highest value audio products on the market today, combining the top performance with the lowest price possible, and their prices are quite a bit lower than most of their competition. The XDA-2 is no exception to this. It's one of the highest value DACs on the market today and offers an insane feature set, especially for the price. Today we're going to look at the XDA-2, talk about how it sounds, and look at its features. Let's get started. The XDA-2 is Emotiva's differential reference DAC. It's fully balanced, meaning it has XLR outputs for connecting to XLR-compatible preamps or power amps. The XDA-2 is also what Emotiva calls a digital preamp. It has a fully analog resistor ladder volume control system, which allows you to change volume in very fine steps with almost no channel imbalance. This is different than the Emotiva XDA-1, which is the older generation, which had a digital, lossy volume control. The volume control on the XDA-2 is fully lossless. The XDA-2 offers only digital inputs. It has no analog inputs. So if you want to use the XDA-2 as a preamp, as I did in my testing, you'll have to only use digital inputs. Now, this does not restrict you from having a CD player. Most CD players have optical or coaxial digital outputs, which you can run into the optical and coaxial inputs on the XDA-2. So the only things you're really limited to are you can't have reel-to-reel and you can't have vinyl or, a turntable. XDA-2 connectivity is excellent. You have a plethora of digital inputs: USB, 2 coaxial, 2 optical, and an AES EBU input for more professional-oriented gear. Outputs include 2 RCA jacks and 2 XLR jacks for left and right. This is a 2-channel DAC preamp. You also have a 5 to 12 volt trigger input and output to trigger other components in your system to turn on and off, or for your other components to trigger this unit to turn on and off. You have a 115, 230 volt power selector for people, so it'll work all around the world. And you have a power switch and an IEC power connector. Now, the included power cable that comes with the XDA-2 is a great power cable, but the mains plug, at least for the US plug, is very tall, so it sticks out quite a bit from your power strip. This may be a problem for people that are running super tight installations. Not only, again, is this a DAC and a preamp, it also has an excellent headphone amplifier with an output impedance of around 1/10 of an ohm. This allows you to be able to drive IEMs to ultra hard to drive planar magnetic headphones with ease. All the headphones I tried on this were driven easily, and there was no problem with the amount of power that it was able to deliver. It was an excellent headphone output. On the front of the preamp, you have volume up, volume down, dim, and mute buttons. You have a standby button, you have your display, and then you have all of the input selector buttons. This allows you to basically control every aspect of this DAC from the front panel, except for the ASRC. Now, the ASRC is a feature that's built into the XDA-2, which is just amazing feature. It reclocks and resamples the coaxial and optical inputs, and there's no literature on it, but it may resample and reclock the USB input as well. I did some testing with my desktop PC plugged in over optical, and I did notice a slight difference. It sounded a little smoother with the ASRC enabled. So let's talk about the sound. For testing, I ran this DAC into my NAD 1300 studio reference preamplifier, which then fed my Point Series crossover, and then that fed my Adcom GFA 545 power amplifier. The crossover output and the amplifier output went to my Spica TC50 speakers and my M&K VX7 Mark II subwoofers. In my testing, I compared this to a couple of DACs. I compared it to the Schiit Modi, the Schiit Bifrost, the SMSL Sanskrit, the SMSL M8, the FIO EO7K, which was my old DAC, with a line-out dock, and then, of course, the XDA-2. Things I noticed in all my comparisons was that the XDA-2 had tons of detail, more detail than any other DAC I listened to. It was insanely detailed, especially in the treble. The mid-range was not grainy, but not smooth either. The SMSL M8 sounded grainy, while the Schiit product sounded smooth. This was somewhere in between. The bass section was excellent. It was very punchy, very fast. It was a similar effect to installing sort of bass traps into your room. The transient response was excellent. This had a similar bass response to the mains powered DAC, so that's the Schiit Bifrost, it's just the Schiit Bifrost. It had a similar bass performance, but some of the external power supply brick DACs suffered in their bass performance. It wasn't quite as fast or nimble. The biggest complaint I had about the sound of this DAC was that it sounded a little bit thin at sometimes. It's not something I'd be able to hear just listening to it by itself, but in comparison to a warmer sounding DAC like the Shit Bifrost, I could definitely hear that the mid-bass, lower mid-range area sounded a little thinner. Now, this is not a problem if you run warmer speakers, but if you run ultra analytical monitors, it may sound definitely a little on the thinner side. Overall, the build quality of this DAC is excellent. I have no complaints. The remote is, standard Emotiva remote, built like a brick. This thing weighs a ton. It is solid, machined metal. It has a magnetic backplate for replacing the batteries. It's just a heavy, great remote. It feels great in the hand. The button presses are very tactile. It's an excellent remote. I have no complaints. The biggest complaints I have about this DAC is that the volume control steps are done very finely in quarter decibel steps, which is great for scientific purposes, but for real world listening, it's almost too fine to work well. I had to hold down. You have to hold down the plus or minus buttons for a very long time to scroll through a decent amount of volume. It takes I think somebody calculated 11 seconds to go 10 dB. It's very, very slow. Another weird quirk that I noticed is that when it's in standby but the main power switch is on in the back, there's a ultra high pitched whine. It's almost like coil whine. It's super high pitched and it blends into the background, but it is annoying. So I usually just turn it off. This is a problem though, because for people that run this on a triggered system or in an installation, you don't want to be turning on and off the power button. And if you have sensitive hearing, you can definitely hear the whine. It's not that big of an issue for me. I just turn it off. But for some people, it may be an issue, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about Emotiva's product line really quickly. The XDA-2, this is the XDA-2 Gen 2, which is just a slight upgrade over the standard XDA-2. The Gen 2 offers, I think, a different USB controller, but that's it. There's no difference between this and the standard XDA-2. The XDA-1, like I talked about, is almost a completely different DAC. It has a digital volume control, and people seem to agree that the XDA-2 sounds much, much better. The XDA-2 Gen 2 has been replaced by the new Emotiva Stealth DC-1, which is around $500. You can find the XDA-2 on used audio websites, AudioGone, US Audio Mart, Craigslist if you live in the right city. I bought mine on Reddit AV Exchange. You can find them for anywhere from $200 to $250. They're a really, really good deal. People seem to think that the DC-1 sounds a little better, and I'm not doubting that. I haven't heard it. I would like to get one in for review. The DC-1, the main feature for the DC-1 that's an improvement over the XDA-2 for me personally, is that it has a set of analog inputs as well as the digital ones. So for people that run a turntable or a reel-to-reel or some sort of another analog input, it's very useful to have an analog input for your DAC. That basically allows it to work as a fully featured preamp. There's no reason why you need a preamp if you have an analog input. The way I run the Emotiva XDA-2 in my standard system is as a digital preamp. I have no analog sources, so I simply just take this, plug it right into my crossover, plug it right into my laptop, and play music. It works perfectly. Speaking of laptop, let's talk about the driver and ease of use and installation. The Emotiva drivers, especially the Windows 10 ones, because those are the ones I tried, didn't work very well. It was intermittent. I had to cycle the power on the DAC a couple times to get it to load. But I read on the forums that the Shit Audio C Media drivers work well for the XDA-2, as they use the same USB receiver. So I downloaded those, and it works flawlessly on all the devices I've tried. I tried Windows 7 laptop, I tried Windows 10 laptop, I tried my Windows 10 desktop. It worked flawlessly on all of them. Speaking of Mac, I used my old MacBook Pro, and I plugged this into my MacBook Pro, and it worked obviously fine without any drivers. All the sampling rates showed up. It was perfect. So the USB input works fine. Obviously, coaxial and optical and AES would work fine because they don't require any drivers. Okay, so let's wrap this review up. Overall, the Emotiva XDA-2 is an ultra high value product. It combines a preamplifier, a DAC, a headphone amplifier all into one box, and does all of those things exceptionally well, especially for the price that I paid. I paid $220. This DAC is an excellent DAC, and I highly recommend taking a look on your used audio websites to see if you can pick one up. Thank you for watching this review, and stay subscribed as I plan to do more reviews on audio in the future. And thank you for watching. Have a great day.